live for a virtual tour at the Andrew Jackson Center, and we are in the gallery here, which is part of the Born for a Storm exhibit at the Hermitage. And today we're going to be talking about some pieces in the gallery and a little bit of history about some of these pieces as we go through the gallery. So first and foremost, we want to kind of give a shout out to our healthcare workers being on the front line and all of our essential workers. We appreciate you for all of your hard work, but we're also going to talk about a connection with healthcare and also healthcare at Jackson's time. So the first item that we're going to talk about today is actually Jackson's medicine chest. Now, when you think about Jackson, and you think about a physical being of Jackson, a lot of folks think that Jackson is quite a very big man because of his larger than life personality. And in fact, that's truly not the case. Jackson was a very tall, thin man, about 6'1", didn't weigh any more than 145 pounds his adult life, and was plagued with health issues as early as a young man all the way through his death in 1845. And also, you know, kind of partook in some of the cutting edge technology of the time, and some of those techniques have been around for centuries. The mindset of purging toxins to restore a harmonious balance in the body, and also believing that the horrible side effects of these techniques actually proved that it worked. Some of those techniques that would be used during that time would be bloodletting, ingestion of mercury tablets, lead acetate baths, and of course whatever the cure-all elixir of the day running up and down Lebanon Turnpike at the time. A lot of folks believed in all of those cure-all medicines of the day. Jackson partook in all of those pretty much. And as we talk about Jackson's health, you know, he actually lived to be the ripe old age of 78 years old. And that's a long time, considering life expectancy during that time. So, you know, his name, Old Hickory, the nickname, befitted him very well, not only as bearing the storm of health issues during that time as well. Now, the next piece we're going to talk about is also in this same case, and this is going to be this beautiful, beautiful gold box. It was presented to Jackson in February of 1819 by the mayor and the alderman of New York City. He was awarded with the Freedom of the City, which is kind of the key of the city, and this beautiful gold box for his heroism in the Battle of New Orleans. You know, Jackson represents true courage and honor and valor, and loved his country very much, and was very proud of this piece. This is one of his most prized possessions and treasures. Jackson was a true patriot who loved his country and what democracy and freedom stood for. So now we're going to move around the gallery here, and we're going to talk about another item, a very beautiful, beautiful item that would have belonged to Rachel Jackson. So follow me on down. We'll talk about this side of the gallery. This beautiful piece right here is a lace veil that belonged to Rachel Jackson. It was actually given to Rachel by the Ladies of Cincinnati Society to wear at the inauguration of her distinguished husband. Beautiful, beautiful stitch work in this veil, and as you can see, exquisite different patterns that spell out the Jackson last name across the bottom. And then as you look up just a little bit, there are 24 stars on the veil as well to represent the 24 stars on the flag at the time. And then in the center there, right above the stars, you will see the emblem of peace. That would have been a very stunning sight to see with Miss Rachel wearing that veil at the inauguration of her husband. But unfortunately, of course, that did not happen. They were making their preparations to leave the property here in December of 1828, and tragically, Miss Rachel will die on the 22nd at the age of 61 from what we believe to be a heart condition. So she will not make that journey to Washington, Jackson will leave here a very broken man, a widower, and with no first lady, which will bring us to this other piece here. Now this is a top hat that Jackson wore, and it is called a mourning wrap around the top of it. When Rachel died in 1828, Jackson would then wear mourning dress from the time of her death up until the time of his own death. Customs for mourning during the time depended on your relationship to the loved one. It could last anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 years, depending on that relationship. Jackson and Rachel would spend 37 years of their life together. They were devoted to one another and loved each other very much. Rachel was laid to rest in the garden on Christmas Eve of 1828, and then in June of 1845, Andrew Jackson will be laid rest next to her there. A lot of folks asked me if Jackson ever remarried after the death of Rachel, and he did not. He loved his wife very much. Now we're going to move on down the gallery for just a little bit, and we're going to show you a display that's on, and we're going to talk about an incident that happened in 1835. Now there's a couple of items in this little display case here. There is a ring and a watch key fob that belonged to Jackson, and of course, a beautiful cane. Jackson was actually painted with all of these items in a portrait by Ralph Earl in 1836. We have many canes on the property here. A lot of them are displayed in the mansion, but there is a story about one cane in particular that Jackson used to defend himself. Jackson was in Washington at the time, and he was at the funeral for South Carolina House Representative Warren Davis, and as he was leaving the funeral, he came around the east side of the Capitol, and a gentleman by the name of Richard Lawrence approached him. He was an unemployed painter at the time. He drew a pistol on Jackson, raised it, and pulled the trigger, and it misfired, luckily for Jackson. He then discarded that pistol and drew another one and fired it at Jackson, and that one misfired as well. Jackson was the first president to have an assassination attempt on his life. Now, bystanders were standing around, which included Davy Crockett, another frontiersman from Tennessee, who will pull Jackson off this would-be assassin, and he will be arrested. Jackson was enraged. Mr. Lawrence will go to trial for the charge of a misdemeanor assault. And Jackson will press the prosecuting attorney at that time, known as Francis Scott Key, to make sure that this man went to jail. But unfortunately, and as luck would have it for Lawrence, he would be found not guilty by reason of insanity and be institutionalized and put in an asylum until his death in 1861. So even at the age of 67 years old, Jackson was quite fierce when he needed to be. Now the last item we're going to talk about today is this beautiful, beautiful carriage that belonged to the Jackson family. This carriage was purchased in 1831 by Andrew Jackson from the Brewster Carriage Works from New Haven, Connecticut. Top of the line model, so if you want to compare it to a four-door luxury sedan, you can kind of put it in that kind of category. Jackson paid $1,000 for this beautiful carriage. It has some wonderful detailing that we want to talk about on this carriage today, starting with this beautiful embossed leather skirt around the driver's seat of the carriage here. And then as we make our way around the carriage, you're able to see some of the wonderful detailing with the lamps and the woodwork on the side of the carriage here. And then as we step up a little bit, we'll take a little bit of a look inside so you can see the beautiful red crimson tufted upholstery, nice and roomy, seating for four. And also another added feature, as you look right here on the door, Venetian blinds. So if you wanted the didn't want the light shining in your face, you could certainly close those and take a little nap if you wanted to. And then another little added unique feature on the back of the carriage is what they call a swords or a weapon case on the back of the carriage here. I'm sure Jackson stored many things in that case there. So this carriage will stay with Jackson in Washington. And a neat little fun fact story about the carriage, Charles